Hi friends, my name is Kim. Welcome to Healing Place Cottage. Welcome to my kitchen. I'm so happy to have you with me today. Today we're going to make another recipe from the all new light cooking cookbook. The recipe is pork with Hungarian paprika. It looked like a delicious recipe, and I had just recently purchased, it's this one right here. I just recently purchased Hungarian sweet paprika for another recipe, and I thought, well, what better opportunity than this to cook something that's diabetic friendly. So let's get started. So we're going to start with a teaspoon of olive oil, and we're going to put that in a hot medium saucepan over medium heat. And we're going to add our onion and our garlic. So it said 1 onion sliced. And you know what I did? I diced my onion. I tried to prepare for everyone today, and in doing so, I failed to read the directions, which I seem to be very good at. But I was supposed to slice the onion and I diced it. I don't think it's going to change the flavor one bit, so we're just going to continue. So we add our onion and our garlic to our medium saucepan. Little on the floor will never hurt anything. And I cut my recipe in half. I think I mentioned that, but if I didn't, I cut my recipe in half. And I will typically do that because I don't like to waste food, and my freezer can only hold so many leftovers. So we're going to cook the onion and the garlic for about 2 minutes, stirring constantly. So this recipe is probably the highest in carbs that we should have as diabetics. It does have 45 grams of carbs. And as I mentioned before, what I have found is that as a diabetic, I should stay somewhere between 30 and 45 grams of carbs before you reduce that to net carbs by subtracting your fiber count. This does have 2 grams of fiber, so our net carbs would be 43, but like I said, 45 before we actually remove those to get up to our net carbs. But one thing that my doctor told me, as I mentioned before, I'm someone living with type 2 diabetes, and that is the reason for my channel. I decided that when I wanted to make lifestyle change, I wanted to see people that looked like me and dealing with the same issues that I was dealing with on a daily basis in order to change my lifestyle. And I didn't find that, so I decided to share this journey with you, and we could journey together. But what my doctor told me is that having pasta or bread isn't what's going to hurt. It's changing my behavior so that I'm not having it every meal of the day. So having it one meal of the day. So this recipe calls for egg noodles, and that's why our carbohydrate count is so much higher. And as long as that's my one meal of the day where I'm really splurging on those starchy carbohydrates, the bread starchy carbohydrates, then it should be okay. And I should be able to check my blood sugar and tell if it spikes my blood sugar, which may be possible, but that's all part of the journey, right? So once we've done this for 2 minutes, it says to go ahead and add the tomato. So it called for 1 tomato diced. Down there, and our peppers. So it called for an Anaheim pepper. As I mentioned, I'm not into hot, so I do know that I like the flavor of poblano peppers. So I put a half a poblano pepper in here. If you were doing the entire recipe, you would put one whole poblano or one whole Anaheim pepper. And it called for one red pepper, and I put half of a red pepper in the recipe. So it also says to add a half a cup of our broth. So the recipe calls for a total of 1.5 cups of chicken broth. I can tell you that that is just scant of a can. I think it's a 14.5 ounce or 15 ounce can of chicken broth. It's just shy. I would say there was maybe a tablespoon of broth left. Hair more. So we add our chicken broth and we add a half a cup of our chicken broth and we add our paprika, and it calls for 2 tablespoons of sweet Hungarian paprika. Smells good. I follow a woman on YouTube who is a homesteader, and she made paprika peppers and made her own smoked paprika for the first time. So that's about, I'm gonna say that's probably, I'm gonna put a little bit more just to be safe. I don't think that's a full tablespoon spoon that I used for that, so I want to make sure that I get the full flavor so that I can tell you. Well, you immediately smell the paprika as soon as it got hot or hit the heat. You can immediately smell that. So we are going to bring this up to a simmer and then reduce the heat. And cover and let it simmer for 5 minutes. So I'm going to get a lid. So this is up to a simmer. I'm going to go ahead and reduce the heat on that. And what does it tell us to do next? So we're going to wait for let that do its work for 5 minutes. And we are going to cut our pork into 8 pieces. So I already cut my pork and trimmed all of the fat off beforehand. And like I said, I am doing half a recipe, so I only have 4 pork medallions. And this calls for either pork tenderloin, you could use pork loin. I used boneless pork chops. Whatever works for you, whatever your preferred meat, you can go ahead and use that. We're going to heat our remaining half teaspoon of oil in the skillet. And we're going to cook the pork for 1 minute on each side or until brown. And then we're going to add our mixture that is over here sauteing or simmering for 5 minutes. So we'll give this just a second to heat up. This is looking and smelling wonderful. I don't know if you can tell, but it's darkening in color from that paprika. We're almost to temperature in our skillet. Not quite, but... And they do want these to be thin because the amount of cooking time is minimal. So I believe that there's an expectation that these are relatively thin. I'm looking to see if it calls for salt and pepper. It does not, but what it tells us is that We need to cook our pork for 1 minute on each side or until browned. And I will get more accustomed to starting this burner in advance so that it brings the skillet up, and I think it takes longer on this little 2 burner that I have here versus on the stove itself. But as you can see, the stove is facing the wall, so there's no way for me to, or at least I haven't figured out a way to be able to capture that on video. And this actually works really, really well. So we'll give it a minute, let this come up to temperature, and we will brown it for 1 minute on each side. So you can hear that sizzle. It's coming up to temperature, and we're gonna let this brown, like I said, for 1 minute on each side. Turn this down just a hair. It looks beautiful. My aunt mentioned that in one of my videos you couldn't see the food, so I'm trying a different angle with the camera today. This is all such a learning experience for me. I have never been someone who did video. I've never been someone, I honestly am surprised that I'm doing this, but I will tell you that I follow a woman. Her YouTube channel name is Cooking the Books, and she's from Ohio, as I am, and she actually mentioned a thrift store that I go to. She actually makes recipes from vintage cookbooks, and she mentioned a thrift store that I go to once on her channel, and then I commented on that, and she actually shared another thrift store that's very good, and I just went there last week and bought several cookbooks for my channel. But she was the inspiration for me to start the channel, realizing that she just had a passion for vintage cookbooks and trying vintage recipes, and she didn't let any of the things stop her from doing what her passion was. So I decided that if she could do it, I could do it. And I have a real passion for sharing my journey and hoping that you too have a passion for learning how to cook different foods in different ways so that we can become healthier together. Give this about 1 more minute. I don't know if I finished that story. But anyway, she is the person who inspired me, and so I just decided that I was going to do it. I went out and got cookbooks and ordered a tripod and a light, and I'm using my phone, and I ordered some editing software, which you can tell I'm still learning how to use. I'm technical, but it still surprises me how very different software is made different by manufacturer. I'm a Microsoft person. I understand Microsoft products extremely well, but this software is a little bit harder, and you've noticed from the first video that I edited where I think the middle was at the beginning, and I just had to post it because if I waited for it to be perfect, I'd still be waiting. So we have let these cook for about 1 minute on each side, and there's a lot of moisture in the pork chops, so they're not really browning. They are tanning. Is that a thing? So they're tanning. We'll go ahead and do the next step, which is to add our onion mixture. And really it's onion, pepper, garlic, and tomatoes. And we're going to let that cook for, we're going to let that cook for 5 minutes. So it says let it simmer for 5 minutes. While we're letting this cook, it says to take our remaining chicken broth and whisk that together with 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. So I will go ahead and add 2 tablespoons of flour. And whisk that together. And once this has been cooking for 5 minutes, we're supposed to remove our pork and then we will add the chicken broth with flour to the tomato and onion and pepper mixture. And we will bring that liquid to a boil, and then we'll remove it from the heat and stir in some sour cream. So I'm curious if you tried one of the recipes that I've posted so far. I've posted 2. So our first recipe was the Tuscan chicken with white beans. And then the second recipe, which was my absolute favorite, I would give that a 10 out of 10. I ate it all week the following week, was the chicken poblano with the collard green couscous. And the flavor on that was some of the best flavor. The combination of flavors was just some of the best flavor that I've ever eaten. And I enjoyed it immensely. I was surprised how much I liked couscous. I really enjoyed the collard greens in the couscous with garlic. I cannot say enough good things about that recipe. And later this week, I'm going to be cooking another recipe from that same book. So that'll be 2 recipes from this book that we're cooking from today and 2 from that book. And I'll be curious how this turns out versus the chicken with Tuscan chicken with white beans, which was good. It was absolutely good. It was not as filling as I would have hoped with all of that protein. I didn't probably eat as much in a serving. I'm so used to having pasta, rice, or bread, or potatoes. I'm so used to having that extra ingredient that kind of balances my plate. And what I'm learning is that a quarter of my plate should be that potato or that rice or pasta or whatever we're talking about. A quarter of the plate should be my protein, and half my plate should be those vegetables, those healthy green vegetables wherever possible, limiting the starchy vegetables like corn. But I do need to get a fork because I need to make sure, oh, the chicken's looking great. I mean the chicken. All this talk about chicken. The pork is looking great. We'll give it just a couple more minutes. We'll come back and remove it from the skillet and then add our chicken broth and flour mixture. I went ahead and got a meat thermometer. I can tell by how difficult that is going in that it's not quite done. So let me know in the comments if you have made either of the recipes that I previously posted. You can tell that the pork is becoming more tender. We're at about 145, which I think for pork is good, but I know chicken is 165. My other meat thermometer actually tells me the range. So I'm going to try and find that one really quick. I did not find it, but what I did find is the little sleeve that one goes into, and it does say that pork is 145. So we will go ahead and remove the pork. Put that on a separate plate. we will take our chicken broth and our flour and add this to our mixture. We will let this come up to a boil. As I mentioned last time, tell me in the comments what it is that you would like to see me make. I have, as I mentioned, over 100 cookbooks now, and I have tons and tons of different recipes, different meats and proteins. If you're a tofu eater, I can make something with tofu. If you are looking for strictly vegetables, I can look for something that's strictly a vegetable dish. If you're trying to stay away from the soy. And I would love to be making recipes that you find beneficial. I know that what I like, but I don't know what you like. And so it would be very helpful for me to make foods that are going to inspire you on your journey as well. So we're going to let this, as mentioned, stir in the flour mixture into the liquid, bring liquid to a boil, and it's coming up to a boil now. I can see that it's starting to thicken. Give it just a second more so it's at a full boil. And then we're going to add our sour cream. We'll pull it off the heat. I'll turn that heat off. Add half a cup of sour cream. So I would say that's about a half a cup. This smells delicious. I told my aunt this weekend I will be very honest about the recipes. I don't have any intention of making something and telling you that I think it's wonderful if it's not. But just remember that my taste buds aren't going to be the same as your taste buds. So it's possible that I'll think a recipe one time is not very good, and you shouldn't let that stop you, because it's possible that you would like it. Just like I mentioned, I'm not a fan of certain ingredients like mushrooms and cooked carrots, sweet potatoes, avocado. Those are all ingredients that I'm going to stay away from. But I'm going to tell you if the recipe calls for it. And that way, if you decide that you do like those ingredients and you want to add them, you absolutely can. So we're going to go ahead and plate this up. We're going to take one of our pork chops, and we're going to, I already cooked the egg noodles. We'll go ahead and top this with our mixture. It says to top with parsley, and I do have parsley this week, so top with some fresh parsley. So it looks beautiful. It smells wonderful. Let me get a knife and let's see if it tastes as good as it smells and it looks. It's not bad. It's not what I expected. I think you need more of the topping on a bite. I don't taste the garlic. I taste the paprika. That's better. I'm not in love with it. What I would do different, I don't know. The combination of flavors works. There's a kick. I'm not sure if that's the paprika. That must be the paprika that has a little bit of a kick after, but we've already discussed the fact that I am super sensitive to heat. So there may not be a kick for you. It tastes like jarred paprika is the only thing I can I don't think the paprika cooked enough, or maybe I didn't cook it on high enough heat. Or maybe I don't know what it's supposed to taste like with that level of paprika in a dish. But it's not bad in any way. It's just not my favorite. Is it something that I will make again? Probably not. I'm going to go ahead and post the video for you. If you're someone who absolutely loves paprika, you probably would like this. I'm not 100% sold on it. I will eat it. I will finish it, and I will eat the rest of it this week. But it's just not my favorite. And that's what we're going to learn together, is sometimes recipes aren't going to be our favorite. Sometimes they're going to be a little bit of a dud, and that's okay. That's how we learn what we like, and that's how we learn I was thinking at the same time about how many carbohydrates are in this, and it's absolutely not worth the carbohydrates that are in this. If I were going to have 45 carbohydrates, I would have something totally different. Because to me, this doesn't taste as rich or as I would want something with 45 carbohydrates. But I've also been really spoiled by the two dishes that I have made. And like I said, that chicken poblano, or chicken relleno with the poblano peppers, oh my gosh, that was so phenomenal that it's going to be hard for recipes to come and compete with that. So I won't make this any more awkward than it already is. I apologize for making a recipe that wasn't the best, but I'm happy that we tried it. And now we know that this is probably something that I'm not going to try again. I will put the recipe in the description box below so that you can take a look and see if it's something that you want to give a try. But I would say at most it's a 5 out of 10. So until we meet again next week or later on in this week with another recipe, I do have one coming up with turkey breast. So I look forward to seeing you again for that. And I hope that you enjoy whatever cooking it is that you're doing this week. And we'll talk to you again soon. Take care, friends. Hi, friends. I wanted to let you know I was so disappointed with the fact that that recipe didn't taste that good to me, that I cooked it longer, because what that taste was that I was tasted like when you make gravy and you don't cook your flour thoroughly enough when you make your roux. That's what the paprika tasted like to me. So I actually cooked my recipe a little bit longer. I put the pork back in the skillet with the ingredients, even though it already had the sour cream in it. I went ahead and added that back in there and cooked it a little longer. And now the paprika has a heat to it and it has a full flavor to it, whereas previously it tasted very raw. And that was the word I was looking for. So if you are someone who does like paprika, I would not hesitate to try this recipe. Cook it longer than I did. And I think that you will get that taste that you're looking for. Thanks, friends. Take care.